he called Zelensky a dictator, which has had a lot of even right-wingers say that that's ridiculous. Zelensky's not a dictator. Putin's a dictator. It's on the front of the New York Post today. Mark Levin, a big fan of the president, spoke out about this. Is that rhetoric that he just throws out there, or do you think he actually means that? What's happening with that word?
Well, look, I think that he's enormously frustrated with Zelensky. He sees that martial law has been in place. I do think elections need to happen at some point. And all of these things can happen once we get to a ceasefire. And that, I think President Zelensky, again, needs to understand that this is a very different dynamic now. This isn't just as long as it takes, as much as it takes, and you do, whatever you want to do. That we are determined to end this war. President Trump is going to do that. What astounds me is the kind of these critical voices that were so demanding of a ceasefire and a stop to the fighting in Gaza, but yet are aghast that President Trump is doing, saying, moving,
they don't want
however
to see
it
anything
takes.
to Russia.
They don't want to see it. So what's the alternative solution that anyone has on the right or the left?
That's the good question, because I don't understand if there's no world in which we're letting Ukraine into NATO.
Who's opposed to peace?
Yeah, I mean, they call it surrender. You've heard them comparing this to a Neville Chamberlain situation, peace in our time. There's a debate unfolding right now between Neil Ferguson, who's a good man, conservative, and J.D. Vance online over about whether this is just giving it all up, whether this is a surrender. It's always easy to get peace if you surrender.
I mean, that's almost laughable, Megyn, that President Trump is just going to give it all up to anyone. And if we look at what we had under Biden's lack of leadership, do you want that? Or do you want someone who is going to go toe-to-toe with Putin, with Xi, with Kim Jong-un? I mean, I'll tell you where my confidence and my vote is.
Explain this to me. I
think part of this was that we moved so quickly. We had that confidence building measure with the release of Fogel. That was in the works. That happened.
That was great.
And then, what was the last prisoner exchange we had? The world's largest arms dealer for a basketball player?
That's right.
So we essentially get that for nothing as a tremendous step forward. We have a call with both leaders the next day, and then we're in Saudi Arabia, and the world, it didn't feel like this was the normal process that happens over months and years. I'll say another underlying premise here is time is not on anyone's side.
Right.
The death and destruction is happening. The threat of escalation is always there. Zelensky's political situation is worsening. And we have an issue here of we're not going to give endless aid and other hundreds of billions of dollars. So I think everyone, and Russia's economy continues to worsen with inflation, with interest rates at 25 to 30%. So everyone should be incentivized to come to the table.
So how much of a concern in this negotiation is...
And President Trump, by the way, also stated that he is perfectly willing to tax, sanction, and tariff the Russians as well. They've demonstrated a willingness to come to the table. Not everyone's going to like all the terms. We now need Zelensky at the table. Not everyone's going to like all the terms. And how we get there, is the process that's unfolding.
How much, if at all, does the threat of China play in all this? Because there's a lot of thinking that it would be great if we actually could have a better relationship with Russia and focus on what many view to be our biggest adversary or potential, which is China. And right now, what we've seen over the past 3 years with this war is those two getting closer and the United States being out.
Who on any aspect of the spectrum thinks that China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran getting tighter in terms of military cooperation, technological cooperation, and economic cooperation is a good thing? No one that I know of. And so if we start having different relationships, and there is the prospect of a bilateral relationship with the United States and Russia that is very different and much less threatening, that arguably is not a bad thing. We need to clear up this issue of a major war in Europe to get to that point.
Maybe I'm wrong, but as a sort of layperson who has never served overseas, to me it looks like, look, it's lost. It's not that anybody won it or anybody really lost it, the Ukraine war, but, Volodymyr Zelensky limited the Russian gains to where he did.
Right.
And now they've been at a stalemate. And now we're just seeing the death toll rise and the price rise. And at some point, somebody's got to, if not cry uncle, just say, let's get out now. Let's cut the losses at this point, because it's not going anywhere from here other than more death and destruction.
The war should have not happened. It really shouldn't, and it didn't happen under Trump's first term. We can unpack, how that deterrence failed. Everything from Biden saying, well, maybe if it's a minor incursion, right, then maybe it won't be so bad, to the giveaways on Nord Stream after the Colonial Pipeline hack. I mean, there were all kinds of things that I think led to deterrence failing. Then we have this incremental, just a little bit here, a little bit there, that essentially drugged this war into a World War I style trench warfare, endless stalemate. Again, if you don't like this approach, President Trump's approach, then what is the alternative plan?
Right.
To continue this forever? What will the war situation look like at the end of this year or next year?
How about Trump saying Ukraine started it? People are going off about that.
Well, look, he's focused on moving forward. We can, and this, came up in the Riyadh talks as well, this kind of long drawn out, and we could go back hundreds, if not over 1,000 years of this side did this, that side did this, 2014, what happened in the Minsk I, Minsk II, and really why I think those talks were a good next step is we kept bringing it, Secretary Rubio, me, and Steve Witkoff, back to, okay, let's move forward. President Trump is ready to move forward.
Trump's well aware Putin invaded Ukraine.
What's that?
Trump is well aware.
No, I mean, he said it repeatedly.
The left is trying to spin this as though he actually thinks Ukraine actually started it.
I'm repeating what he has repeatedly said. Russia invaded a neighbor, Georgia, under Bush. Russia invaded its neighbor, Ukraine, under Biden. And Russia invaded its neighbor under Obama, but not under him. Those are his words. They invaded.
We continue to face uncertainty when it comes to the economy, with a perfect storm brewing as Social Security and Medicare hit a breaking point as the largest generation is hitting retirement. A smaller workforce means a smaller tax base. You pair that with our growing national debt and rising cost of living, and we could have a big problem. So what are you doing now to protect your family for the future? Gold can be a safe haven in hard economic times, and Birch Gold makes it easy to diversify a portion of your savings into physical gold. Birch Gold will help you transition an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and it does not cost you 1 cent out of pocket. Protect your future today. Text MK to 989898, get your free info kit on gold, and get a copy of the Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. There's no obligation, just information. Birch Gold has earned the trust of countless Americans looking to safeguard their savings. Just text my initials MK to the number 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.